In Chicago, Mayor Raham Emanuel has ordered a flood of cops into the city's most violent neighborhoods today. There have been 7 shootings since last night, but it was the shooting death of a 15-year-old girl just a mile from President Obama's Chicago home that prompted this crackdown, and Dean Reynolds has more.
Hadiya Pendleton was shot in the back on Tuesday as she and some friends gathered at this park on the way home from high school. Targeted, police said, by a gunman who likely thought they were rival gang members trespassing on his turf. Damon Stewart is Hadiya's godfather and a Chicago policeman.
A combination wrong place, wrong time. One individual walks in and somebody comes following, shooting. Nothing you can do about it.
But the plan announced today to shift 200 police officers from desk jobs to street duty is one initiative designed to saturate gang-infested neighborhoods with law enforcement.
As we grieve for Hadiya, we need to work together to protect our greatest resource, the children of the city of Chicago.
But in an interview earlier this month, the mayor admitted it will take more than flooding Chicago with cops to stop the killing.
There's an element to that. There's an element to people's sense of not having any sense of hope. But that doesn't dismiss and permit
or
excuse any sense of that violence.
Hadiya Pendleton had a lot of hope.
Hi, my name is Hadiya.
She was opposed to gangs and even produced this video back in 6th grade.
So many children out there are in gangs, and it is your job as students to say no to gangs and yes to a great future.
She was a good girl who stayed away from any and everything that she thought could knock her off her track, and she seemed to be on the track to great things.
Now, the mayor has asked the community for help in solving her murder, Scott, and while the police have received a number of tips, they have yet to make an arrest in this case.
Dean, thank you. Now, here's something we were curious about. So far this month, there have been 42 shooting deaths in Chicago, but that is 3 times as many as in New York City. We wondered why the difference, so we asked our senior correspondent, John Miller, who's a former deputy commissioner of the New York City Police Department, to join us from New Orleans tonight. John, why is New York City enjoying record low violence when the violence is so high in Chicago, Philadelphia, or New Orleans?
Well, you look at New Orleans, there's a celebration going on around here, but part of the reality is this is one of the cities that leads the nation in murder. And the disparity, according to a police executive research forum study that brought all the police chiefs together, was it's what happens to the arrests after they get to court. Now, take New York. They have a 3 to 5 year mandatory minimum. That means if that gun charge ends up in front of a judge, you're almost certain to go to jail for 3 years. In Chicago, you've got a 50-50 chance that you're not going to do any jail time almost. 33% of those cases are dismissed outright.
So if you're caught with a gun in New York, whether you've used it in a crime or not, you're going to jail for 3 to 5 years, but not in Chicago.
But not in Chicago and not in most cities because they don't have those mandatory minimums and the prosecutors and the judges exercise that discretion. The bottom line is if you're a criminal thinking, do I take that gun when I leave the house today or not? The risk factor in a lot of the major cities is pretty low that even if you're caught, you're going to do time in jail.
John.